Okay, so in this video, I will show you how you can use AI tools like ChatGPT to get way more value out of the English podcasts that you already listen to and make huge progress in your listening comprehension, your vocabulary development, your writing, and even your speaking. Now, I wanted to make this video because I hear so frequently from people who listen to lots of English podcasts, but don't feel like they're making the progress that they want to be making. And they're stuck at that dreaded intermediate plateau. And using tools like ChatGPT is one way of breaking through and really working with a podcast episode and getting much more value out of it than you would do just by listening. Now, I have split this video into 4 different sections. We're going to talk about improving your listening, your vocabulary development, your writing, and then your speaking. For each section, there are 3 different exercises, and I will also put timestamps down below this video so you can jump forward to the one that you would like if you don't want to watch the whole thing. I will be sharing my screen and sharing a lot of different prompts that we can use with ChatGPT. Now, you don't have to worry about copying them down every time you see them. I will put a link in the description to this big database that I keep of Learn English with AI prompts. You can just go and download that from that link. It's completely free and I always keep it updated, so it makes it really easy to just copy and paste the prompt rather than having to type it in each time. And my last admin point before we start is that I will be using ChatGPT for the purposes of this video, but you can use any AI tool you like, Grok, Gemini, DeepSeek, whatever you like. I will just use ChatGPT because it is the one that most people are familiar with. Now, first things first, we need to choose a podcast episode to work with. You may already have your favorite podcast or your favorite selection of podcasts, so go and choose an episode from one of those. In terms of the length, really the ideal length, in my opinion, is anywhere between kind of 5 and 30 minutes. If it's much longer than that, it can get a little bit confusing for ChatGPT to work with. So I'd really recommend something that is kind of maximum 30 minutes in duration. For the purposes of this video, I will be using an episode of English Learning for Curious Minds, which is the podcast that I make, but you can choose whatever podcast you like. So, we've got our podcast episode. What next? Well, the next step is that we need to provide ChatGPT with the transcript of the episode that we will be working with. That's why it's an idea to have one that's not so long, because if you're listening to a podcast that is, 1, 2, 3 hours long, that's a really long transcript. So ideally somewhere between 5 and 30 minutes. And how do you get the transcript of a podcast episode? Well, if you're working with a podcast that's available on YouTube, then you can normally click Show Transcript, and there is this AI-generated transcript. It's not perfect, but it's okay, so you can get it from there. There are also tools like Descript and Otter AI that allow you to import an audio file, and they will also generate a transcript for you, which contains timestamps. That's a very useful thing. I'll put the links to those tools down below this video as well. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I will be using an episode of English Learning for Curious Minds because it comes with proper transcripts that are timestamped and all that kind of stuff. So it just makes it a bit easier when it comes to working with ChatGPT. So let me just dive in and select an episode now. So this is English Learning for Curious Minds. Let's choose this one, shall we? The Stanford Prison Experiment, 22 minutes, so it's about the ideal length. And as you can see here, we have the entire transcript. So I can just go and copy the whole thing. And then what I want to do is I want to paste it into ChatGPT like this. But if I just paste this into ChatGPT, it's going to be a bit confused. It has no context. It doesn't know why I am pasting in a podcast transcript. So what I'm going to do is I will dive into my prompt database here and get this prompt. Prepare AI to practice with a podcast. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste this in here. I want to use this podcast transcript to improve my English. I will paste the full transcript below. Once I've done that, wait for me to tell you what I want to do next. Do not respond until I give you an instruction. So there we go. ChatGPT has the context of the podcast that we want to work with, and it is waiting for my instruction. Great. So the first category of things that we will be talking about is using ChatGPT to help us improve our listening comprehension. Now, for many people, you might think, well, this is easy. I just need to listen actively. But the problem is that not everyone does it. And getting ChatGPT to create us mini comprehension questions and exercises is a really good forcing function to make sure we're really paying attention to what we're listening to. So, our first prompt is this one. You are my English tutor. I've just listened to a podcast episode and pasted the transcript above. Ask me 5 comprehension questions based on the episode. Wait for my answer after each one. If I'm wrong or stuck, give me a small hint before telling me the correct answer. After all 5, give me a quick summary of how well I understood and suggest one area to improve. Now, before I send this message, I want to point out to you a couple of things. Now, here, if I'm wrong or stuck, give me a small hint before telling me the correct answer. This is important because it really forces us to think rather than just say, I don't know. And it's an example of treating ChatGPT more like a tutor that is helping and guiding us rather than just something that is producing questions and saying wrong or right. So let's see what happens now. Okay, question 1 seems pretty good. We can respond saying anything we like. In a prison. Okay, I'm just going to go quickly through the rest of the test. And let's see what happens if I can't remember. Okay, so you see that ChatGPT has remembered what we told it, and it's given us quite a good clue. Let's see what happens if we get it wrong. Okay, so quick summary, I got 3 out of 5 right, and ChatGPT suggested areas for improvement. Great, it did exactly what we asked it to. Now, I took a bit longer to go through that one. Don't worry, we're going to power through the other ones a little bit more quickly. But I just wanted to demonstrate exactly how it works. Now, let's try a simple exercise for the second one. Based on the transcript I provided, choose a short paragraph that contains useful vocabulary and is slightly challenging for a B2 learner. Of course, you can change this to whatever you like, B1, C2, C1. Remove 6 to 10 keywords to create a fill-in-the-blank exercise. Present the blanketed version first. after I try to complete it, show me the correct answers and explain any tricky vocabulary. Let's see how this works. Okay, very nice. Of course, if we want to go back and listen to it one more time, we could even do something like this. Okay, so you can see the benefit of providing the full transcript with the timestamps. Let's just check it got it correct between 00106 and yes, it got it completely correct. So if we wanted, we could go back and fast forward to that point and play. An unfortunate truth about humanity is that we humans... So that is a useful prompt for a fill in the blank exercise. Now for the last prompt in the comprehension section, let's ask ChatGPT to test our summarization skills. In other words, let's ask it to test us on summarizing the episode. This requires us to have listened actively, to have really engaged and understood what we have heard. So again, I'm going to go back into my prompts database and get this one here. I want to improve how I listen to and remember podcast content. Ask me to summarize the key arguments or ideas from this episode from memory, compare my summary to the actual transcript, and highlight anything I missed or understood. Okay, so I'm just going to try and do this myself. It's actually been quite a while since I worked with this episode, but let's try. And let's put a few errors in there too. Okay, so it's done a pretty good job here. It has seen what I wrote correctly. It has highlighted the misunderstandings or inaccuracies, and it has also told me about the important points that I missed. Great. That is a really useful exercise for forcing us to try to remember exactly what we've heard. And of course, that is a very useful skill in life in general, but especially in professional contexts where your boss or manager might ask you to relay to them the outcome of a meeting or something like that. So summarizing is a really useful skill. And here is how you can use AI to practice it with a podcast episode. Now, let's move on and talk about vocabulary development. Now, I've spoken before about using podcasts to improve your vocabulary, and I firmly believe they can be an absolute goldmine in terms of native level expressions and really learning to speak and learning to use words that real native English speakers do. So here are 3 different ways in which we can use ChatGPT to help us work with podcasts to improve and enrich our vocabulary. So here I'm back in my prompt database and I'm doing this one, extract native level words or expressions from an English podcast. So now that you have the transcript, help me improve my vocabulary. Find 10 natural sounding expressions that native speakers use, but I probably don't. You can also give it more context here, like I am a B2 level learner, let's say. Explain what they mean and how I can use them in my own speech. Challenge me. Create a fill in the blank exercise where I have to choose the correct expression in different contexts. At the end, ask me to use 3 of these expressions in my own sentences and give me feedback. So what we're doing here is we are trying to pinpoint native level, natural sounding vocabulary that has been used in the episode. Let's see what happens here. So I'm just going to fast forward a little bit. Okay, so we have 10 natural sounding expressions from the transcript: spiral out of control, lose one's mind, settle down, and so on. I think it's done a really good job here. It's provided the meanings and examples. We also have a fill in the blank exercise, which helps us practice actually using this natural native level of vocabulary. It's done a very good job there. And it's also asked us to use these expressions in our own sentences. So we've learnt those words if we didn't know them already. We've done a mini practice of choosing which one is the most appropriate, and we are being forced to actually generate our own English using those words or phrases. So we've gone from just noticing them, perhaps in the transcript, through to working a little bit with them, through to using them ourselves. So that is a really valuable exercise to go through. Now, the next one is quite a fun one, and it is based on synonyms. If you don't know, a synonym is a word that means the same thing as another word. So let's try this one. Choose 5 common words used in the transcript, e.g. good, big, interesting. For each word, ask me to suggest 2 or 3 more advanced or natural alternatives. Tell me which ones are best and suggest others I may not know. Explain the subtle differences and ask me to write a sentence with one of the new words. Let's see how we get on with this. 5 common words from the transcript, 2 to 3 advanced or more natural alternatives for each. Okay, so I'm just gonna go in and do this exercise myself just to demonstrate that for you. Okay, so let's see how we do with that one. Okay, I'll just fast forward a little bit. Right, so it's done a pretty good job. It's correctly told us that celebrity is usually a noun. It's not a synonym for famous, which is an adjective. And it's given us some better alternatives, which is great. Celebrated, renowned, and prominent. Bad, it's told us a bit more about diabolical, that it carries a strong moral judgment. Normal, it's told us that normality is again a noun. It's told us we've got both of those wrong. And it's given us that exercise at the end, write a sentence using one of these new advanced alternatives. Great, I think it's done a pretty good job there. So for the next one, we've got quite a fun exercise. And this is based on choosing pairs of similar words. So choose 5 pairs of similar words from the podcast transcript, e.g. big versus huge, argue versus debate. Explain the subtle difference in meaning or tone between each pair. Give one example sentence for each word. Ask me to write my own sentence using one of the words, and then tell me if I chose the most natural option. So this is very good when it comes to expanding our vocabulary. And let's see how ChatGPT gets on. Again, I will fast forward a little bit. Right, so it's done a pretty good job. It's correctly told us that celebrity is usually a noun. It's not a synonym for famous, which is an adjective. And it's given us some better alternatives, which is great. Celebrated, renowned, and prominent. Bad, it's told us a bit more about diabolical, that it carries a strong moral judgment. Normal, it's told us that normality is again a noun. It's told us we've got both of those wrong. and it's given us that exercise at the end, write a sentence using one of these new advanced alternatives. Great, I think it's done a pretty good job there. For the next one, we've got quite a fun exercise, and this is based on choosing pairs of similar words. So choose 5 pairs of similar words from the podcast transcript, e.g. big versus huge, argue versus debate. Explain the subtle difference in meaning or tone between each pair. Give one example sentence for each word. Ask me to write my own sentence using one of the words, and then tell me if I chose the most natural option. So this is very good when it comes to expanding our vocabulary. And let's see how ChatGPT gets on. Again, I will fast forward a little bit. Okay, so let's see how it did. Authority versus control, behavior versus attitude, role versus position, observe versus watch, aggressive versus strict. I think it's done a really good job here of finding words that are very similar but have nuances, differences in their meaning. These are kind of words that many people at B1, perhaps even B2 level, might not know exactly what the difference between them is. And there we go, at the end it's given us an exercise. Choose one word from the pairs above and write your own sentence using it, and ChatGPT will give us feedback on whether we had the most natural choice or not. So those are 3 really interesting and useful exercises that we can use ChatGPT with to help us improve and enrich our vocabulary from an English podcast. Now we're going to move on and talk about writing. Now, writing probably isn't the first thing that comes to mind when you think about skills that you might improve when listening to a podcast. But writing about what you hear is a really powerful way to turn input into active language skills. We're listening and we're turning that into written words. So the prompts that I'm about to show you will help you summarize ideas, vary your sentence structure, and improve and learn English grammar, all through an English podcast that you're already listening to. Okay, so for our writing exercises, we've got one more sort of classic one, and we've got 2 that are slightly unusual but really helpful. So the first one is currently called the incredibly creative generate writing exercises from an English podcast, and we can copy it here. So now that I've pasted the transcript, I want to improve my writing by summarizing and reviewing the episode. Guide me through these exercises. Write a 3-sentence summary of the episode, shorten it to 1 sentence, keeping the key idea intact. Write a 100-word review of the episode, including what I found interesting or challenging. So I'm not going to go through the whole exercise with you, but as you can see, ChatGPT is guiding us through it, and at the end, it will give us corrections on grammar, clarity, and naturalness. And it's going to also suggest 2 ways to improve my writing. So that's a kind of classic writing task, and ChatGPT and other AI tools are very, very good at this. Now the next one is something I've called the podcast-based sentence rewriting challenge, and it is this. Based on the transcript I pasted, choose 5 complex or interesting sentences. For each sentence, give me the original, but then ask me to rewrite it in 2 ways: a simpler version with the same meaning, a more advanced version using richer vocabulary or more sophisticated structures. Wait for me to respond with my rewrites, then provide corrections, suggestions, and explain how my versions compare to the original in terms of structure and tone. Okay, it's given us some good sentences there. Let's just try with one of them and see what it says to us. And I'll throw in a few errors in there for good measure as well. Okay, let's see what ChatGPT makes of this one. Okay, people can be bad to each other's. Of course, it should be each other, and ChatGPT has explained that to us. My more advanced version, ChatGPT has given some good feedback on that as well. He is poetic, though slightly old-fashioned and literary, and has given some general feedback about this exercise. Now, this is a really useful exercise that really requires us to think about language, to think about register, and to think about what the most appropriate word is for what we're trying to communicate and who we are trying to communicate it to. So this is a really good one when it comes to vocabulary enrichment, grammar, accuracy, and overall writing. On the subject of grammar, our last one from the writing section is this one. You are an advanced English tutor. Scan the previously provided transcript and find examples of sophisticated grammar structures, including conditionals, cleft sentences, inversion, passive voice, and complex relative clauses. For each, provide the sentence, highlight the grammar pattern, and explain why it is used. Then challenge me to write one original sentence using the same structure. Now, don't worry so much if you don't know what all of these mean. They are just more advanced grammatical structures. And this is a far more enjoyable way of learning about these grammatical structures that native English speakers use. It's far more enjoyable than picking up a book and going to the section where it says cleft sentences or inversion. So this is a much more natural way to learn grammar. And we'll just fast forward again. So it's found conditional structures, cleft sentences, passive voice, complex relative clauses, and inversion. And for each one, it's given us the original, it's explained the grammar, and it's given us a mini challenge, a mini writing task. Now, as you can probably see, even if you didn't know what a complex relative clause was or what a cleft sentence was, these are things that native speakers use. And so if you want to really improve your grammar and be able to write like this, then mastering these kind of grammatical techniques is really important. And doing so with a podcast and with the help of ChatGPT, I hope you agree, is far more interesting than using something like that and kind of reading about cleft sentences in a textbook. Okay, so that is it for the third section, talking about improving your writing and grammar. Now we're going to move on to talk about improving your speaking, fluency, and pronunciation. Now, I know that for almost every English learner, this is one of the hardest things to do. And it's also made more complicated for those of you who don't live in an English-speaking country and who struggle to find someone to speak regularly in English with. And this is where AI tools like ChatGPT can be really helpful, right? They can act as a conversation partner for you. But one of the things that I hear a lot from people is that they initially were very excited about things like ChatGPT voice mode, but kind of struggled to get into a routine because they felt like they always had to kind of bring new topics and it got a bit tiring. And, you know, there's only so much talking you can do about how was your day or what's the weather. So this is where podcasts can be really helpful because you've given ChatGPT all the context of the podcast that you want to talk about, and now it's time to work with it. So let's move on and talk about improving your speaking with ChatGPT and podcasts. Now, you probably know that you can click on this button down here, which is use voice mode, to enter voice mode in ChatGPT and have a conversation with ChatGPT. But the problem with just clicking that straight away is you haven't provided ChatGPT with all of the context about what you would like it to do. So here's what you should do first. I'm going to go back into my prompts database. And this one is called Enter Voice Mode to discuss an English podcast. So I am going to tell ChatGPT I'm about to enter voice mode and I want to have a conversation about this podcast episode. Here's how I want you to interact with me. Act as a conversation partner, not a teacher. Keep it natural. Start by asking me a broad discussion question related to the episode's main theme. After I answer, ask me a follow-up question to push me to explain more, point out grammar mistakes, unnatural phrasing, or missing details, but don't interrupt, wait until I finish. At the end, summarize my strongest and weakest points and suggest one way to improve. Okay, ChatGPT has actually given us a question to start off. That's okay. Why do you think ordinary people sometimes behave cruelly when they're given power over others? So let's enter voice mode. I think that some people behave cruelly towards others because there is something evil about all humanity.
That's an interesting take. Do you think the environment or situation can influence this behavior as well?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. Do you think the environment or situation can influence this behavior as well?
Okay, that was just a very quick demo, but as you can see, that can go on for as long as we like. And I'm not going to go into all of the different ways in which you can use ChatGPT voice mode here, but I wanted to show you that relatively basic way of starting a discussion based on a podcast episode. Now I've got another prompt to show you relating to voice mode. Let me pull that one up now. And this is called Podcast Summary to a Friend. So again, I'm going to enter voice mode. Imagine you're my friend or colleague and I've just finished listening to this podcast episode. Ask me casually, so what was the episode about? Then let me speak for 1 to 2 minutes without interrupting. Then ask 2 to 3 follow-up questions to help me go deeper into the topic. At the end, give me feedback on how clearly I explained the topic and how naturally my English sounded. Suggest 2 to 3 alternative ways I could have expressed myself more fluently or naturally. So the difference here is that we're telling ChatGPT not to interrupt us, just to let us speak casually, allowing for pauses and so on, and act in a very friendly and natural way. So hopefully it should feel like we're under less pressure than we would be if we were in a situation with someone who was our teacher, let's say. So I want to tell you what the episode that I've just listened to was about. It was about the Stanford prison experiment, and this was an experiment that took place where the environment of a prison was simulated.
That's a good start. What were some of the surprising findings from the experiment?
Can you speak more slowly, please?
Of course. What were some of the surprising findings from the experiment?
Okay, so as you can see, we can continue that conversation for as long as we like. And you can adapt it in whatever way you'd like. You can say you're trying to talk to your boss about it. You're trying to summarize it in 30 seconds or less. You can edit this. There are so many different things you can do, and I just wanted to show you those two to give you a little bit of inspiration. Now, for our last prompt, we are going to talk about shadowing. Now, shadowing, in case you don't know it, is an exercise where you listen to a piece of audio and you try to speak exactly like the person speaking does, using the same intonation, the same pronunciation, the same rhythm. And it can be very helpful for building up fluency, confidence, and of course, improving your pronunciation. And we're going to use this prompt here. You are my pronunciation coach. I want to improve my fluency and natural rhythm using shadowing. Based on this transcript, select 5 short but high impact sentences that I should repeat out loud. Prioritize the sentences with natural stress patterns and connected speech. Provide the transcripts so I can easily find them in the audio. At the end, suggest one pronunciation tip based on the sentences you selected. Okay, so we've got some pretty good sentences there, short, high impact. And what we can do is we can go straight into our podcast episode, so it's 6:53. And we can practice doing it at the same time.
But it didn't take long for things to spiral out of control.
Okay, so there we have it. That is how to create some shadowing exercises with the help of ChatGPT and a podcast. Okay, that was a longer video than I thought it was going to be, but I hope you found it useful. As I said at the start, there's a link to the prompt database down below if you'd like to download that for yourself, so you can copy and paste the prompts that I was using in this video. Now your task is to go out and start using those prompts. Choose a podcast episode. Use the prompts that I've suggested in this video and let me know how you get on. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.